right, let's get started. Continuing on with the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab Outstanding Guest Speaker Series, today we are pleased to present Julie Huffman. Julie has been a librarian at the Los Angeles Public Library for 16 years and has had the privilege of being the genealogy subject specialist for 8. Her interest in genealogy started ages ago when her great-grandmother told her she was related to the King of Sweden, which turned out not to be true. Julie has a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Missouri and a master's degree in library and information science from UCLA. Her hobby is doing her friends' genealogy so she can learn more about other cultures, places, and history. Today, Julie will present on the basics of heraldries, or sometimes known as coats of arms, giving you an overview about the history, the components of heraldic achievement, how to find the arms of a person, how to identify who owns an unidentified coat of arms, international variations, and how it can be used for genealogy. So without further ado, I would like to offer a warm virtual welcome to Julie.
Thanks so much, Sue. And thanks for inviting me here. You've got such a great program going on, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. So my name is Julie Huffman, and I am the genealogy librarian here at Los Angeles Public Library. And most of my job as the genealogy librarian involves helping people figure out their trees and doing genealogy. But heraldry also falls within my realm. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, just the basics of heraldry, and let's get started. So what exactly is heraldry? Okay, so this is a simplification, but if you've heard of coats of arms, you've heard of heraldry. And if you haven't heard of coats of arms, you'll know what I'm talking about by the end of this session. This is the coat of arms that belonged to Henry VIII. But heraldry is far from dead. Modern people and even organizations and places have coats of arms too. Elton John, for instance. And here you can see a coat of arms that has a lot of personality that relates directly to Elton John, the piano keys. Also, women can have coats of arms. Here is a recently created heraldic achievement for the new Duchess of Sussex and California native, Meghan Markle. So today's talk is going to be a big picture, basic overview of heraldry in general. It's a complicated subject and every country has its own rules. So today I'm really just sticking with the basics. I'm not even going to be talking about so much about what our library has as far as resources go, because I just want to give you an overview. And I understand that this presentation is being recorded, so you could watch it again if there's something in particular you want to see again or you're interested in. I would say don't take too many notes at this point. Just let the information wash over you and don't get overwhelmed. Like I said, it's a complicated subject, but I'm just going to introduce you to it today. So originally, shields and coats of arms had a very practical use to distinguish friends from foes on the battlefield. The background here of my introductory slide is a famous tapestry depicting the Norman conquest of 1066. It is called the Bayeux Tapestry, and it has its own museum in Normandy, France. It is not only very old, a masterpiece of embroidery created in the 11th century, but it is 230 feet long, which is 3/4 the length of a football field, to just put it in perspective. That's why it has its own museum. But coats of arms, heraldry, it was initially used so that you could distinguish people on the battlefield. But the reason I'm mentioning this marvelous piece of art is that the warriors depicted on its field show no signs of coats of arms on their uniform. So it must have been pretty tricky to discern friend from foe. The events depicted on this tapestry ended with the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Then the earliest known decorated shield in England appeared in 1127, which was 60 years after the Norman conquest. So we can perhaps surmise that heraldry started up in the European world approximately between 1066 and 1127. Either way, it was a heck of a long time ago. Our talk today will focus primarily on heraldry in the British world, but many countries and peoples take part in this practice or forms of this practice. If you think about it, American football teams' uniforms and African tribal shields might even, they are identifying devices that serve a similar purpose as heraldry. And then on a personal note, when I started this job here, I had a decent command of genealogy, but whenever someone would come to the reference desk and ask me about heraldry, I would become a deer in the headlights. And so I knew I had to do something about that because I hate being a deer in the headlights. So I took this class. It was an online class taught at the University of Strathclyde in Scotland, and it was the introduction to heraldry. Today, the University of Strathclyde has evolved this into a complete degree program, genealogical, paleographic, and heraldic studies. But I wanted to bring this up because everything you hear me say today, I owe to this man here, Dr. Bruce Dury, who is the absolute expert on heraldry. And I want to emphasize, whenever you're scared about any topic, there's always a way to learn about it, especially now when so much is available online. There's no reason for you to be a deer in the headlights. And by the way, this URL that's on the bottom of the screen here and others you see in this presentation or in the handout Sue sent out to you. So along with my contact information, and feel free to write me anytime. Okay, so here is a more detailed definition of heraldry. The art or science of blazoning armorial bearings and of settling the rights of persons to bear arms, in connection with which it deals with the tracing and recording of pedigrees. So let's break this down. The art or science, meaning there are definitely artistic depictions and different styles you'll see on a shield, but the elements that are depicted have to follow certain rules. So therefore, there is a science to it as well. For instance, these three lions are very different artistic takes on what is called a lion rampant. But for a lion to be rampant, it has to be viewed in profile, rising off its hind legs with its forepaws raised. So you see here three very different artistic takes, but each image had to be a lion in profile on its hind legs with its forepaws raised. The next part of the definition is blazoning. And this simply means a verbal description of what you see on and around a coat of arms. So in this example, the blazon for this coat of arms would be written out like this, which looks very complicated, but because of that, it is very descriptive. An artist who, quote unquote, speaks this language would be able to read this blazon and construct an accurate coat of arms from it. The next part of the definition refers to armorial bearings. This is the group of objects depicted on and around a coat of arms. I say on and around because a person's arms is not just the shield. There are often elements around the shield that are particular to the arms. The complete enchilada and everything around it is known as a heraldic achievement. This example displays armorial bearings that are three different sets of lions in different aspects: an eagle, a ram, fleur-de-lis, specific colors, and a specific helmet and crest. And these are the armorial bearings of this heraldic achievement. The next part of the definition mentions settling the right of persons to bear arms. And we're not talking about weaponry here. We're talking about the right of a person to be entitled to an arm, to a coat of arms. And this is a very important part of heraldry that not many think about. Not unlike being copyright protected, countries who are serious about their heraldry assign a heraldic achievement to one person, place, or organization only. And they usually have strict codes about inheritance. So when people come up to me and say, I'm looking for my coat of arms, I have to gently remind them, it's not technically yours. It might be your ancestors, but you have to have settled the rights to have this be the arms that you bear. So, so we have to think about that too. It's sort of a copyright facsimile. Within this book here, An Ordinary of Arms, which is basically a register of people in Scotland who have been granted arms, we will find blazons. Again, written descriptions of specific coats of arms. I looked at this particular blazon, deciphered its cryptic words, which you'll learn about in a moment, and then I created a coat of arms that followed its directions. And here's what it looks like. And this specific entry in this register mentions who this coat of arms belongs to. It belongs to Reed of Strathlock. And finally, the last part of the definition, heraldry deals with the tracing and recording of pedigrees. Does that sound familiar to you? Yes, genealogy. Now, you might not have ever noticed it, and I'm hoping after this presentation you will, but heraldry is all around us. You'll find it in special military insignia, on a Freemason symbol, for example, fraternity pins, even tattoos represent a certain form of heraldry. This is my view actually when I'm waiting for my bus after work, and it's just a majestic building. It's the Jonathan Club, and I usually gaze longingly in its windows, hoping they'd invite me in. But one night when I was standing there marveling, I noticed this in the middle of the building. And then I got a book on the Jonathan Club and zoomed in on that and saw it's actually a very nice heraldic achievement. So next time you're walking around your town, see if any of the buildings around you have anything like this on them. They're kind of hidden in plain sight. So how is heraldry useful? Well, as I mentioned, at its origin, it had the very practical purpose in identifying what team a person was playing for, basically. The invention of the barrel helmet, you can see that in the middle warrior here, he's got a barrel helmet on. It completely covered the face. So to identify people on your side, or even to identify people who were competing in a jousting tournament, it was necessary to paint a design or on a banner, a flag, or a surcoat that would serve this purpose. Thus the term coat of arms. Arms can also indicate family descent and affiliations. With the advent of marshalling arms, which we're going to talk about soon, it became possible to identify family mergings. I'll talk about how that might be helpful in genealogy. And not that Americans really subscribe by this, but different helmets in a heraldic achievement, how they face, what type of helmet it is, whether or not a person has a crest or supporters. We're going to talk about that in a second. It can indicate how high up the chain they are in society or how low they are in society. For instance, this type of helmet indicates the armiger, or the person who owns the arms, is a member of the nobility. Whereas this style of helmet indicates the armiger is a knight or esquire or gentleman. And heraldry can absolutely be used for genealogical purposes. In order to lay claims to arms, one had to definitively prove their descent from an armiger to the authorities. And we can use this paperwork as evidence for our own trees. You can see in this example, this register of arms is not simply a blazon with a name attached to it. It is a mini genealogical gold mine. In addition to the tiny description at the bottom of Arndale Francis Sparks' arms, We see where he lived, where he was born, who and when he married, the names of his children, and who his parents and grandparents were. And finally, coats of arms can add personality to your tree. Arms are not just an arbitrary collection of colorful, wacky images. Many times the items on a shield can tell you what the priorities were for the bearer. Here's an example of a coat of arms granted to a city, otherwise known as civic heraldry. It's for the burgh of Clydebank. Each item in this artistic interpretation has meaning for the town. And I'm just going to go through you to show you how much information you get from one coat of arms here. The saltire, the red X that dominates the shield here, represents the Earls of Lennox, and they were high profile in this region. The sewing machine in the chief, which is that upper middle part of the shield, represents Singer, the sewing machine company that was famously made here. The warship HMS Ramil in the middle base was launched from Clydebank in 1892. The stag's head on the left there, or the Dexter side of the shield, represents the arms of shipbuilder James Roger Thompson, who was the first provost of the burgh. The lion on the right is from the arms of Alexander Dunn Pattison of Dalmuir, whose lands these were, where the burgh of Clydebank is. And then the motto at the bottom, Labora et Scientia, means by effort and knowledge, which could give you some insight into maybe what the people value in this town. And the mural coronet, which is above the shield, it looks like a castle wall, that indicates that this burgh is a royal burgh. And the sheaf of cereal crops at the very top on the crest refers to the area's previous role as the breadbasket for Glasgow and the area around. So just from this one coat of arms, you get so much information about what the people in the town find important. Now let's break down the nuts and bolts of a heraldic achievement. I'm going to use Scottish heraldry as an example. Every country has different rules, but we're going to stick to Scotland because that's what Dr. Bruce Drury talked about, and that's what I know. What I know. Okay, so starting with the core, the shield itself can provide some information, the shape of the shield, that is. Different countries and different eras have differently shaped shields. Women's shields are lozenges, meaning they're shaped like a diamond, except in Canada, where they view that as discriminatory. Bless them. Shields are also known as escutcheons, and the shield is the most immediate basic clue that you are actually looking at a coat of arms. The shield provides the platform for the armorial bearings. For instance, these. And any of the items that you find like this, mullets, a lion, they're known as charges. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Next, you'll often find, but not always, a canton. This is used to distinguish shields of people in the same family. It's called a difference, and we'll talk about that soon. Mantling, or lambrequin, is a robe around the shield, and it's used to indicate the rank of the armiger. Mantling also had a real purpose in the days of night warfare in protecting the knight from weapons and the sun. The crown, or coronet, is also an indicator of rank. Not every coat of arms had one. You had to be of a certain rank for that privilege. The helmet, or helm, is yet another indication of rank. The style of the helmet and the direction it faces matters. The wreath, or torse, is more of a practical design element. It's usually the same colors as the mantling, and it serves to hold the mantling in place and unite the helmet with the next component, which is the crest. It's also a unique identifier and again, an indication of rank of the armature. Oftentimes people confuse the expression coat of arms with crest. They'll say them interchangeably, but the crest is really just the top of the whole heraldic achievement. And supporters are actually one of my favorite parts of a heraldic achievement because they're oftentimes pretty kooky and colorful. And at the bottom of the whole shebang, you might find a motto. The motto can be an interesting part of the arms because it gives an indication about what the family found important or defining. Mottos, depending on the country, can be found above or below the shield. They are also a little more flexible in that they don't necessarily need to be granted by the main heraldic authority, depending on the country, and they can also change through time. This motto for the MacDougall clan means conquer or die. And there you have the basic elements of a heraldic achievement. But that's just the beginning. The shield itself can be quite complicated. First of all, it can comprise different colors, which are called tinctures. And to make things extra tricky, these tinctures are usually expressed in the blazon in French. For instance, red is called Jules. And please forgive my pronunciation, those of you who speak French. I took German in high school, so it doesn't help me. But anyway, I'll try. Now, also, so we have red here, but many of the old books that were printed were not printed in color. So how they got around that was they assigned different patterns to specific colors. So Jules in black and white looks like this, vertical stripes. Azure is blue, and in the black and white books, it was horizontal stripes. There is green, and here it is in black and white. Sable is black, and here it is in its black and white form, but weirdly, I mean, not black and white form, this is what it looks like, but weirdly, when it's produced in a black and white book, they give it this pattern. And I don't know why they don't just have a solid black. Maybe it was like they wanted to conserve ink, or it was hard to see charges on top of it. But anyway, this is what it looked like in black and white. There's also purple, but I've chosen just to show you the first four today. Along with the colors, there's something called metals. And these are also popular, and basically other colors for the shield. Gold or ore looks like this in black and white. Silver or argent is really just expressed as the color white. Even both in color and in black and white, it's just white, but it's silver. Then there are the furs, which are designs that represent different animals whose furs they are. Ermina, a white weasel looks like this. And Ver, which is the red squirrel, looks like this. Then we have the ordinaries, which are shapes that can be placed on the shield. This is a cross, which makes sense. It looks like a cross, and it can be executed in any of the tinctures, furs, or metals. And I've used the metal ore or gold in this example. A pale is a vertical bar, and this one is Jules or red. A fess is a horizontal bar. A bend is a downward facing bar. A chevron is like this, like the gas station. A saltire is like a cross, but on the diagonal. And a chief is a bar on the top of the shield. And these are absolutely not all of the ordinaries, just a sampling. We then have subordinaries. Quarter, which is evident here. Flanches. Fret. Oral. Escutcheon. And lozenge. and roundel. Lines of division, just to make things even more complicated, the lines around any of these ordinaries and subordinaries can have different designs in them. I'm going to show you some examples as if they would be executed on a fess or that horizontal bar. This is embattled, looks like a castle wall, indented, dansetti, wavy, nebulae, which is my personal favorite, potente, and dovetailed. Now we get to the fun one, charges. These are shapes. The mullet, which we call star, escallop or shell, cinquefoil, fleur-de-lis, lymphad, crescent, and then all kinds of animals, even fantastical ones, as you can see in the middle. The way these animals are positioned is important. And let's use a lion as an example to show you some of those. This is a lion's head erased. And when they say erased, it means it was separated from the body with a jagged edge. So it's a little ghoulish, but you see what looks like fur down there. That indicates this lion's head has been erased. If it was cooped, it would be a solid straight line break between the head and the body. Lion rampant, which we saw earlier. Lion gardent, where the lion is looking at you. Lion statant, with his front paws down. Lion couchant. And then this is my favorite, lion dormant. I think that would probably be on my coat of arms. The points or areas on a shield are also important to mention when you are blazoning a coat of arms. You want to make sure the blazon indicates where a certain charge goes. And so you tell based on the area of the shield. This is the dexter side, this is the sinister side. Now dexter means right and sinister means left. And you'll say, Julie, those are backwards, but basically you're supposed to pretend that you are the person, the warrior holding the shield. So your left is the person looking at you's right. So that's why dexter is on the left, sinister is on the right. Chief is at the top and base is at the bottom. Then within the shield, we have dexter, middle, and sinister chief. We have an honor point, fess point, navel point, and then the three bases, dexter, middle, and sinister. Now that you know some of the charges, the attitudes, the tinctures, and locations on a shield, let's dissect a blazon. Okay, here's our heraldic achievement on the left that we're going to use as our example. And here is its blazon. When you're writing a blazon, you start by describing the shield first. So argent, which is silver, and it's represented as white here. So you simply say the name of the shield first, argent. Then you state the main charge next. In this case, it's a stag. You mention its aspect. It is springing. You could say that in other ways, leaping perhaps, but this blazon, the author decided to say springing, which is pretty descriptive. And then you'll notice its tincture, Jules, which is red, is stated after the noun, a stag springing Jules. And this is just how the blazon language works. You put the adjective after the noun. Next, you mention another major element of the shield, which is this chief. Don't look at the stars, just look at the bar right now. That's known as a chief. And you'll see on a chief vert, which is green. So it's a green chief. And then on that chief are three mullets, which are stars, of the first. Now in blazons, they don't like to repeat saying a color. It's just a quirk. So they don't say three mullets of argent. They say of the first, because argent was the first color mentioned in this blazon. Above the shield, you'll see a helmet befitting his rank, and that's standard speak for expressing the helmet. They don't describe the helmet in detail. You have to just know the rank of the armiger, and then you execute the shield, the helmet that is supposed to relate to that level in society. This helmet tells us that the armiger is a knight, esquire, or gentleman. We know he's a man because the shield is a standard shape and not diamond shaped like alazans that a woman would have. It's a standard, so it's a man who is of the level in society, who's a knight, esquire, or gentleman. Next, the mantle is described, not its shape, just its colors. An artistic license can be taken with the shape, how flowy you want it, whatnot. And they are using the terms argent, silver, and vert, green. And even though these tinctures were stated before, because we've moved off the shield in our description, it's okay to repeat. Don't ask. That's just what they like. So argent is the top color and vert is the bottom color. Argent with a double or second layer of vert. And finally, the crest, which is a hand couped or cut off smoothly from the body. You can see it's a straight line, the hand removed from the body there. It's holding a sword, all proper. And what proper means is that the coloring of the object is how it would look in real life. So this looks like the flesh of a hand. The sword looks like the same colors that you might see with a sword. Now, one could also include the motto in the blazon or not. Sometimes mottos are not represented on a heraldic achievement, so it's not here. Okay, now, since we've gotten that, let's go one step further, and it's going to get a little more complicated. What happens when two armigers with two completely different coats of arms marry? Because remember, women can have coats of arms too. So when two armigers marry, the merging of their arms is known as marshalling. And here's an example, a very basic fake make-believe example. Mr. Fess, an armiger, meets Miss Cross, and she is a single lady with an armiger father and brothers. And that's important to say because that means there are other heirs in the family, and that will influence the way that these arms are marshaled. You'll see her arms are on a lozenge, and that's because she's a woman. So they get married and become Mr. and Mrs. Crossfess. And the husband's name is always last if they decide to keep both names. Their arms become impaled or split. His are on the dexter side, hers are on the sinister. So you can kind of see it's their arms, but they're just split down the middle on the center shield. So they have a child, and the child gets a different, a boy, he gets a different version of their marshaled arms. Their arms become quartered on his own shield. He marries Miss Starr. Now she, unlike his mother, is an heiress, meaning her father's dead. He has no sons. So she's probably the eldest daughter. She is an heiress. What happens now is her lozenged arm becomes instead on his shield an escutcheon of pretense. So there's no impaling, there's no splitting of her thing with his. It is put on top of his shield as an escutcheon of pretense. Okay, so that's complicated, right? Well, look at this one. Okay, this is an extravagant example of arms that have been marshaled like a crazy person. Okay, and you can look and see how it started off was with this family, this coat of arms on the very upper left. This is the Stowe Armorial, created around 1806, and it's on display at the Gothic Library at Stowe House in England. It's 4.5 feet in diameter, and features 719 quarterings of the Temple, Nugent, Bridges, Chandos, and Grenville families. Another facet of heraldry involves how the inheritance of arms is handled. Each country has different rules. For this example, I'll show you how Scotland distinguishes a coat of arms within the same family. So this is the father's shield. A label, which is that design at the top of the shield, is added to the shield for his eldest son's arms. So you can tell the father's from the eldest son. But when the father dies, the eldest son loses the label and inherits an undifferenced shield. However, the rest of the sons do receive different shields. So the eldest son has his father's shield, but the rest of the sons have the shield, but with a difference on it. And this is interesting because it indicates which son comes next age-wise. So the second son gets a crescent, the third son a mullet, fourth son a martlet, fifth son an annulet, sixth son a fleur-de-lis, seventh son a rose, eighth son a cross, and ninth son a quatrefoil. So what's neat about that is you can look at someone's shield and know where they fall age-wise in the family. Daughters are entitled to use their father's undifferentiated arms, but they are displayed on the lozenge, that diamond shape, instead of a regular shaped shield. So as I said before, the number one heraldry related question I'm asked at the reference desk is, what is my coat of arms? I'm looking for my coat of arms. Well, and I explain that it's probably not your coat of arms, but it's your ancestors' coat of arms, which is still interesting and important, but I just want to try to emphasize that because arms are not automatically inherited most of the time. So I will ask the patron, what's the surname of the person you're looking for? And then I go about finding the nationality of the surname. And if the person doesn't know what country the people with their last name come from, I consult surname books to try to figure it out. And there is a dynamite resource. It's a 3-volume set called The Dictionary of American Family Names, edited by Patrick Hanks. Now, our library has this physical set, but we also have this as an ebook. And Ancestry.com has also converted it into a mini database of sorts. And it's one of their free links on Ancestry. And this URL is in your handout. But anybody can go to this link, type in a surname, and this Dictionary of American Family Names will tell most likely where that surname comes from. It's a really good starting point. Here's an example of that database I did using Suzanne's surname. So if this were the name that my patron were researching, I can see here Malek looks like Polish, Czech, Slovenian, and Suzanne can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to that definition, but that appears to be the most likely place it's from. But for someone who's looking for this name, after I find that out, I would generally steer them then towards Eastern European heraldry tools. And so that shows you why this Dictionary of American Family Names and this database based on it are a really good starting point, because it can tell you what tools you're going to have to use to figure out the heraldry behind it. For instance, here are some of the resources you could consult based on from where the person you're researching lived. And again, there are a lot more resources I've put in your handout, and it's just kind of a reference for you in case you're interested later. But a lot of these resources are so old that they've been digitized and they're online for you to access via Google Books or archive.org. And you sort of just hunt and peck through them. So for instance, for Suzanne, for Malek, I might start with the armorial general, the bottom one, European in general, Reed Stapp's armorial general. If nothing showed up, I might then go to the German Siebmacher's Waffenbuch, just because sometimes Eastern Europe and German kind of overlap a little bit. When you do go to these resources, they're organized alphabetically by surname. So you would go to the M's, find a list of Maleks, and read the blazon for each of their coats of arms. Here's an example using me. So I know from my genealogy research that I have an ancestor from Cornwall, England, whose surname is Chenoweth. And this is one of the resources you can use for British armigers. A general armory of England, Scotland, and Ireland. So I went alphabetically and I found this. You'll notice you have to be flexible with the spelling. Just like in genealogy, you really have to expand your mind and open up, how could this be spelled? So this was with a Y instead of an E. Now this listing here is just a very bare bones blazon for the surname. It's not specifying the specific Chenoweth who's entitled to this coat of arms. It's just noting that someone with the surname Chenoweth was entitled to this coat of arms. We can decipher what the coat of arms should look like based on this blazon. SA period stands for the tincture sable, or black. And it's starting out, so with sable is the first word. We know that's the color of the shield, a black shield. Then it says, on a fess or, which means there is a gold, or is gold, remember, a gold bar, fess is a bar across the middle. So there will be a gold bar across the center of a black shield. And then finally we see three griffins' heads erased jus. So a griffin was a mythical character with the head and wings of an eagle and the body of a lion. Erased means that the head is going to have a jagged edge where it was separated from the body. And GU stands for jewels, which is the color red. So for this, so the shield for Chenoweth is going to be 3 red griffins' heads on a gold bar in the middle of a black shield. And I created a version of this coat of arms using the blazon as my blueprint. So there is a method to the madness. Different artists can play with different styles of griffin, I just want to mention, but the blazon tells them that you do have to follow these rules. There's going to be 3 of them. They're going to be erased, so jagged at the neck, and they're going to be red. On the other side of the coin, let's say you have a coat of arms, but you don't know to whom it belongs. And so there are a couple ways you can figure out who owns the arms. The easiest way is if it has a motto. That is definitely the easiest way. And down here, we've got this motto on the bottom, and then we also have a slughorn or a war cry up top, which can give you some identifying things. It's really helpful to have both of them on the same shield. So what I did was I looked up, we have a book called the Handbook of Mottos, and I found out the what they meant. Nobilis ira, noble in anger. And the motto means he flourishes through the honor of his ancestors. But in addition to the meaning of the words, which are usually in Latin, you see the names of the armigers that these mottos were awarded to. And looking at this, I see Stuart, either S-T-U-A-R-T or S-T-E-W-A-R-T, as kind of being a common denominator. So then I go to one of those resources for Britain, and I'm going to look up Stuart in this dictionary. And here is what I see. Not only do they give me a blazon, not depicted here, but they executed a drawing of the arms and say which steward it is. And then below you have the blazon and information about it. Now, looking at these, they look very similar. We have some differences with some mantling. The crown looks a little different. And also you might notice here, a mullet for difference. So this tells me that the steward that has the mullet as a difference on its shield is probably a son of the one on the right, on the left, which has nothing. That's the original pure shield. If you don't have a motto, you can also use a book that's known as an ordinary, which is like a dictionary organized alphabetically by main elements, by main visual elements on the shield. So for this shield, you might think roses are the main element, but actually the cross is in the middle with the engrailed design to the line. So if you go in an ordinary of arms, which is the British ordinary, one of them, and look up cross alphabetically, you'll see all these different arms that feature a cross, but this one, cross engrailed, which is that fancy dip in the line between 4 roses jus, or red, 4 red roses. And this one, which describes it perfectly, is granted to Aten of that ilk. So that's how you would find out who owns this shield. You'd go to an ordinary. I mentioned every country has its own rules. This book, International Heraldry, is a really good basic book to consult if you're trying to figure out, let's say you're of Italian descent and you wonder, oh, did Italy have a heraldry system? This book will tell you exactly how Italy handled its heraldry. But I've used this book to sort of go through some of the basic differences between major countries mentioned in it. Starting with England, earliest coat of arms, as I said before, 1127 AD. And they have an official heraldic authority, which is like a governmental agency that regulates who's entitled to arms, and it's called the College of Arms. The fee, and this, by the way, information is as of about 2020, so it might be slightly different, but the fee for a personal grant of arms is $8,400, about. And then to inherit arms, to take those Malek arms from the very first Malek, you've got to prove that you're a direct descendant of the person who is entitled to those arms. If you are, it's not necessary then to apply to the College of Arms. Mottos are really loosey-goosey in England, meaning you can choose whatever you want. It's not necessarily like as persnickety as the images on your shield. And supporters, which are those crazy creatures on the sides of your shield, on either side of your shield, they're not inherited. They're also only for people of rank, like upper class. Scotland is the earliest coat of arms, 1170. Their official heraldic agency is the Court of the Lord Lion. About $2,800. To inherit arms, you have to prove to be a direct descendant of the eldest son of the armiger. And if you're not, if you are related directly to the armiger, but you're from not the eldest son, you have to apply to the Court of the Lord Lion. Mottos are a little firmer in Scotland. They're part of the grant, they're unchangeable. Supporters are not class specific, meaning you don't have to be upper class like you do in England to have them. In Ireland, the earliest mention's a little later than those other two, 1382. And then the official heraldic authority of the Republic of Ireland, not Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, is the Genealogical Office, which is a branch of the National Library. Fees about $4,800. This is interesting. People who show descendancy from a clan can display that clan's arms, but only a direct descendant may bear the arms. Now, I'm a little shaky on the difference between display and bearing, but I think display means like you could put it on a pub sign, you could have it on napkins as like a logo, but you cannot bear it and say, this is my coat of arms. And so the official heraldic authority of the Republic of Ireland was the Genealogical Office, but Northern Ireland falls under the English College of Arms. France. Anyone, regardless of class, could bear arms, which I love. That's nice. The first example of a peasant granted arms was in 1369. The heraldic authority is the College of Heralds. It was created in 1407. Before that, the king granted the arms. And for a while, it was unregulated, but in 1984, the French Council of Heraldry was created, and the fee's about $140. So France is a little more egalitarian across the board, not so snobby maybe. Germany, instead of differences like that mullet or crescent that you saw on the shield in the example I showed earlier, they use different crests, which are the very top feature of a heraldic achievement, to distinguish shields within one family. Not just for nobility, and but then nobility did want to be sort of different, so they decided to use a barred helmet to separate them from the chaff. Heralds were extinct in 1700, but today an association called Herald is responsible for registering arms, and the fee is about $240. Spain had kings of arms, but never an official heraldic agency. In 1915, the Ministry of Grace and Justice started regulating who was considered appropriate as a king of arms. 1948, the recognition of noble titles was reestablished and controlled by the Ministry of Justice. In 1951, kings of arms were replaced by chroniclers of arms. But the last national chronicler of arms died in 2005. However, a local community appointed a local chronicler. That's a little bit confusing. Now, yes, you're Americans, we're Americans. Do we have anything like this? Well, we have no governmental heraldic authorities. We do, however, have an American College of Heraldry, which is a nonprofit that does not grant arms, it only registers them. So in true American fashion, anyone who can pay the fee can register a design as their own arms. You don't have to be granted, you just have to cough up the money. Arms, though, are not copyright protected, but a blazon can be. Yet anyone can draw from the blazon and display it as their original work. And the price today is about $400. And just as a side note, and to show more worldly examples, this is an interesting example of Chinese heraldry that someone in a local Chinese genealogical group brought to my attention. So this is a symbol for the family Chen. And so these designs symbolize a chariot and banners and kind of a war aspect to it, but I thought it was kind of cool. It kind of reminds me of Chinese language figures too. So how can you use this for genealogy? Well, you might possibly break down a brick wall by tracking lineage in reverse. I know in genealogy, one of the cardinal rules is you start with yourself and you move slowly back in time, but eventually you do kind of hit that brick wall, and you can use your surnames as clues to maybe jump back in time, find somebody who looks good to be your person, and research them coming back towards you and see if they link up. Because heraldry is old resources, so you kind of have to start back and move forward. So for instance, again, with my person, this is my brick wall, John Chenoweth. The word unsubstantiated, but found in several family histories, is that he came to America from Cornwall around 1715, born in St. Martin's in Manege, Cornwall, but as I said, not substantiated anywhere. One of those irritating, uncited family histories. And I've seen his name spelled a zillion ways. So I know I'm going to have to really be creative when I'm looking for him in heraldry resources. And so my first step here is going to be to hit the British heraldry resources because he's from Cornwall, England. And you'll see a list of those in your handout. So from Burke's General Armory, I found these two listings for differently spelled Chenoweths, but either one of them could be my person. Want to point out here, these blazons are very similar to that last blazon I showed you with the griffin's head, but the one on the top has Cornish chough's heads, which are like a crow, a blackbird. So these are basically kind of the same blazons, except the animal charge is different. One's a griffin, one's a chough. I looked in the next on the list for British resources, didn't find anything. Same thing with this one, and same thing with this one. Since I noticed that Cornwall seems to be a common denominator, I went into our catalog and I did Cornwall heraldry as keywords. You could do that for the Library of Congress. You could do that in family searches, digitized book collection. So I found all of these in our collection that seem to relate to Cornwall armories, which are lists of armigers. Looking through those, the bottom one, Magna Britannia, led to something interesting. The top one is nice in that it tells a specific town where the person's from. So I could research Newland and see if there are any local resources there that might give some information. Also, it says that that Chenoweth was a blacksmith. And I know that my Chenoweth, the one in America who was in Maryland, was a blacksmith. So that's kind of interesting. The bottom one gives a lot more information about who people married and the family names of those people that are married. So I could research those people and see if there's anything that sticks with my tree. And also on this bottom one, I want to point out again, the blazon looks very similar to the one I've seen before for Chenoweth, a black shield with a gold fess, but this one features eagles. So it seems like sort of a difference for all these Chenoweths is the charge, the animal charge they chose. So that's also something for me to like just put in the back of my mind. Some of the arms can be a visual family tree. For instance, this blazon talks about a quartering by Nanspian and Chenoweth. So that tells me that at some point a Chenoweth married a Tregose. So because when it's quartered, then that means there was some sort of marshaling happening, some sort of family melding that happening. So I could, that happened. So I could maybe investigate Tregose and see who these Chenoweths were who were associated with that family. Also, this is kind of interesting in that this little like horizontal bar of 3 roses in the middle, it's called a baton sinister because it's angling, it's angling to the left. It can indicate that the armiger is of illegitimate birth. So people who were born out of wedlock also could get their own coat of arms, but they had this bar sinister or baton sinister put on their shield that would basically spill the beans that you were illegitimate. Also, heraldic documents, they're very old, they're very proved because people had to really go through a lot to get approved for a coat of arms. They might be the only genealogical information available. And so this is an example from Burke's Landed Gentry, and it gives you a whole lot of genealogical information as well as probably a blazon down deep, but this is just a lot of family information. So I know it's a lot. I mean, and condensing it into an hour was not easy, but it was supposed to be an overview, and I hope I haven't overwhelmed you. But if anyone has any questions, please ask now.
Okay, I'm going to ask the class, if you'd like to ask a question, please leave your camera off, but turn your microphones on and go ahead and feel free to ask.
What if you have copies of several different family crests? Only one of them has a name on them, but the rest of them, they have slight differences. The shield is different, a different shape, but the rest of it appears to be the same. And what does it mean if there's on the side, I'm sorry, I forgot what you call that,
The
but
supporters.
yes, the supporters are just simply leaves or very ornate type of leaves. And my last question is that in the center of one of my family coats of arms, I believe is more a direct line in my family, but it has something like a mountain at the bottom and a square in the center that has, like, I don't know, it's all different things on it.
Well, let me start with question number one. We have a guide here at the library that does talk about shield shapes and what kind of information you can get from that. Usually, I think it's an indication of the country the shield is from and also the time period. It's not, you could probably represent that shield on any shield shape. It wouldn't like violate any rules, but the original that you find can give you some information about country and time period when it was created. The only time I've seen really a tough break between shield meanings would be the lozenge shape, which is for women, and then just the general shield shape, which has a lot of variations and flexibility. So that's that. The supporters, the last question you had, it could also be maybe like kind of an extravagant mantling. Do you happen to notice if it's related to the mantling that's kind of like draping the shield, or does it look like it's a distinct feature, like trees or something like that?
No, it just looks ornate on the sides.
It's
If anything, it looks like it's relating more to the crest.
It might just be someone fancified it, you know.
Okay.
If you find a blazon for it, see if it's mentioned, but usually they just say the colors in mantling. They don't describe the shape of it if it's related to the mantling, which is connected to the crown.
Okay.
And
And
then
then the last part of my question was about the mountain at the bottom of the shield. Does that mean something?
I don't know. There in one of the resources in your handout is a dictionary of heraldic elements by Elvin, I think. And that is really, it shows just a zillion different charges and ordinaries that could be used on a shield. So you could look in there and see if mountain is one of them, or they might call it, I mean, sometimes you have to kind of like be flexible and say, oh, what do they call it? Berg or mountain or hill. But they'll show visual examples too. And that book is available online at archive.org. So you go through and see what they call it.
Who's the author of that?
Elvin, Elvin.
Okay.
And you'll see it in the handout. And once you find the terminology for what you're looking at, it'll help you a lot, because then you could kind of search blazons using their wording. Because, for instance, who would call a star a mullet, you know? And yet that's how it's listed in all those old heraldic dictionaries, is mullet, but you'd be looking in the S's. So you kind of have to just get the lingo.
do you know if there's a difference between a 5-sided star and a 6-sided star? A pointed star, I mean?
I don't know.
Okay.
My guess would be no, but a 6, maybe more points might indicate it's more like, oh, I don't know, a sun or yeah, I don't know. It could. The
Okay.
littlest stuff has meaning, but it also might just be artistic license.
Okay. Thank you.
Julie, in the chat box, I see Connie has posted that her Boyd shield is azure with a fess red and white checkered ?
Checkered just means exactly how it sounds. It's usually like checky, CHEQUEY, and that just means like a checkerboard. And let me see the chat again. I'll need to take a look at that. So the shield's going to be blue, and it's going to have a bar across the middle. A fess is just that horizontal bar right in the middle, and it's going to be the bar is going to be red and white checkered, like a checkerboard.
And I had a question on your slide that was under cadency and difference section. What happens if a son dies? Let's say the second son dies. Does the third son get the second son's shield?
I don't know. I think it might be dependent on the country. Part of me thinks no, you'd still stick with what you had. And also, I don't know what happens after the number 9. Like, what if you have 15 kids, boys? But the rules are all covered in some of those huge tomes of like British Heraldry. A couple of them I think are in the handout, just like kind of the rules. And it probably in the cadency chapter would talk about that.
And while you were talking, I looked to see if we had that Dictionary of American Family Names, and we don't have it, but I think I might have enough money left in my budget to get it. So I'm going to try to get that ordered.
Well, the ebook is available by through Overdrive, but it's a PDF format, so it's a little tricky to download. But and it's very expensive, the ebook. But anyway, I thought that would be kind of neat, because then people, when they're at home, they're like, oh, I've got, just off the top of your head, you have the surname you want to look up. They could use the ebook. Ours is behind the desk, and we have to take ID for it and everything, so it's a little trickier to access.
Now, you had mentioned that you had I think you called it a cheat sheet on the shields. Do you want to show the class how they can get to that?
A cheat sheet on the shields.
Or like I think just a few moments ago, didn't you say something about how you have like a guide?
Oh, when I was answering the question about the different shield shape. Can I email it to you after the class?
Oh yeah, no problem.
I can't remember if it's in a book or if it was a PDF that the old genealogy librarian sent me, but I know that I had to refer to it once to try to figure out who owned a specific shield, and I didn't know what country even the shield was from, and the shape of the shield was very helpful using this guide to figure that out. I just can't remember right now what it was.
Oh, and you asked about my surname, Malek. Actually, it's the Middle Eastern spelling. My husband's from the Middle East.
It's Arabic.
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, I was aware of the fact that it was also a European spelling, but yeah, mine is exactly, it's from the Middle Eastern version.
And that was mentioned in the definition, wasn't it? I think that I showed. I thought it, the secondary definition said something about from the Arabic and spelling, but I don't know how to go about finding Arabic heraldry. I haven't yet dipped my toe in those waters.
Yeah, I'm very frequently over the years, people said to me, "Oh, it's a European name." I said, "No, it's not." But I understand, because that and I've looked in a lot of books under the spelling of that name, and I was aware of the European as well. Now, I know if any of you out there in the audience, if you are planning on joining the colonial dames of the 17th century, today's lesson that Julie has given us is very important, because a big part of belonging to that lineage association is your coat of arms. So if you are planning, or even if you're currently a member, you'll know that that's a big thing that they push after you become a member, is to do your research on your coat of arms. Now, Julie, do you have time to show us your website, or are you pressed
Yeah.
for time?
No, I'm not at all. Let me bring it up. Okay, so this is our homepage, lapl.org. You can kind of see up here is our URL. Now, so we have, I mentioned e-media, and maybe I'll point that out. To download our e-media or just view it online, you need one of our library cards, which you just have to be a California citizen, or if you have a friend who's got one, you can do that. But let me just see here. Overdrive, right over here, is our biggest e-media provider. So I'm just going to go straight there. I'll just show you an example of some of the stuff. Maybe and so basically, if you just search, let's see if Iowa genealogy brings up anything, just playing around with keywords. This is a family history. And so you could borrow this, descendants of Dennis Conyers. So I thought it was kind of unusual that they had so many family histories to purchase in Overdrive. I thought it was going to be more of a how-to sort of thing, although it is. Irish genealogy. So we can see these. This cookbook came up, but this one's definitely a genealogy guide. And so there are really hundreds of ebooks and a couple of e-audios. There was a good, great courses put together by Coletta, who was just kind of like a how to get started in genealogy. And I believe that's also an ebook. Can you see, I switched, it looks like it gave me a different tab. Can you see the Family Tree Irish Genealogy Guide right now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so I'm gonna get out
And
of there.
I want to let the class know that I believe the local, I think Carson, I'm not sure, I have to double check, but I believe the Carson City and Washoe might have Overdrive. We do not, because we're an academic library, so we don't have Overdrive. We have different ebook vendors. We use EBSCO, and I think there's at least one or two others. But I do believe the public library does. So this might be something that the people who live here locally or don't live locally can look to their public library for.
And if they don't have very many genealogy titles, let them know that you're interested in that, because they need to know that, and they'll order them for you. From our website, well, first of all, this is how you search the catalog, just this little basic search blank up here. And so let's say I was looking for family histories. What I do is I type in my keywords, but I change this to subject. If I'm looking for family histories, I then like to do this because it will look for books that have this as a subject. And then you'll see what we've got. And we have a lot of family histories. They're referenced, you have to be here to read them. But so there are 3 different family histories we have here. You could just do a general keyword search. See what we've got in Iowa. Like I said, our collection is nationwide and worldwide. So we have every state, not just California. And then we have a lot of genealogy databases. Some of these you can get from home with a library card. I'm going to filter by history, geography, and genealogy. And now we've got 75 results here. You can just scroll down and see what we have. Some of them that are ones that we developed, we have digitized all but the 1903 Los Angeles city directory. So you can go into our city and street directories area, and anybody can do this. You don't need a library card. So if you have Los Angeles relations or Southern California relations, you can go in here and see what we've got. This one might be of interest: California, Oregon, and Nevada Trades Guide from 1874. And you just click in there. Some of these are duplicated in Ancestry, but we have a different searching software. So if you don't find it there, check us. But it's kind of a lovely digitized collection. And then we also have a genealogy and local history index here, which is a real bare bones database. But you go in, it's kind of like a mini Percy, if you're familiar with Percy, with the Allen County Library puts out, that is sort of the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature for genealogy magazines. This is sort of a mini version that our librarians have maintained for a long, long time. And so you type in your family name and see what we've got, and it will point out 34 resources that feature that surname. And this one is obvious because you'd find that in our catalog if you searched using Chenoweth, but things like this are not. Colonial Families of Maryland. Now, our catalog record for this book is going to be a little more spare. It's not going to mention every surname that's in the book, but this index mentions the main ones, and Chenoweth happens to be one of the surnames mentioned in this book, Colonial Families of Maryland too. So you might not have known that. So this index points you in the right direction. We're
Now,
about,
Julie, is that bare bones database that you were just showing us, is that based on your old shelf cards? Because I remember, years ago when I went to your dedicated genealogy floor, I remember the librarian pointed me over to that old card catalog.
that's exactly it. Okay, so in 1997, we stopped creating new cards for that physical collection, and then just started creating the index records in this database. And concurrently, we are working to get all those cards input into this database. And right now we're just to about the letter G.
Goodness.
It's been taking a long time, but during the COVID year, when we were working from home, 11 of us in this department each took a drawer of those cards home and just worked on indexing them, and we made a big dent in it. But typically, I mean, it takes about a year per drawer for somebody to do it. So that's why we're only to the letter G. So if you're here in person, you definitely want to check the physical card file if you have people with surnames after the letter G, but you can search all of the stuff up to G should be online now, including the stuff that's in the card file.
That's great, because obviously it wasn't online when last time I was there, because I remember the librarian specifically told me, start with the card catalog.
Yeah, usually when I'm giving a tour here at the library, that's where I lose people, because they want to start flipping through the cards to look up their surnames.
I can understand that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, let's see here. I'm looking through. I don't see any other questions in the chat box. Certainly, I hope you have some questions. This was a lot to absorb.
I hope it wasn't overwhelming. The course I took was a couple months long, and I did a lot of reading, so I sort of absorbed it until I can condense it into an hour as an overview. I mean, I didn't want it to be overwhelming, but just to give you kind of a taste of what it's about. I think it's pretty interesting, and a sociological thing too. It's like, why do we feel compelled to identify ourselves and our hierarchy within society? And everybody does it, from sports teams, in your colors on your team. It's like, I couldn't all of a sudden say the Green Bay Packers are red and orange. It's like, no, they're green and gold. Okay. But it's just an interesting human feature that we feel compelled to categorize like that.
I agree. Okay, give it just a few more seconds. And you know what? I kind of like to give a plug, since we're talking about this topic. If you could, Julie, if you could just stop sharing your screen for just one moment.
Yep.
I want to share my screen here. Hold on, let me make sure I've got it up before I share my screen here. Oh, let's see here. Go to the library. Let's see here, library research guides, and then to genealogy. Okay, let me share my screen real quick here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to point out that in reference to today's guest speaker topics, we do have a section in my LibGuide here on our webpage on heraldry. And it was interesting. I think I'm going to, after I watched Julie's presentation today, I think I have a separate section over here for names, for, what the books we have in ebook form as well as paper form, about all the types of names and stuff. But I might end up merging these two as a result. I'll have to give that a little bit more thought. But I did want to point out to the class, if you're interested in what our library has on this topic of heraldry, this is a really great place to start. And of course, most of these books are reference materials, which means they cannot be checked out and taken home. But nonetheless, that's what our research room is now dedicated to, is the idea that of the books being there available for you when you need them, and therefore they're not able to be checked out. Wendy, I see that you've got your camera on. Did you have a question? Maybe you might want to turn off your camera and ask the question.
Sue, that's a dynamite research guide section. I'm floored. It looks amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It looks great.
Feel free, to use it, Julie, or, refer to it anytime you'd like.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I'm going to check it out.
Okay. All right.
Do you have to have a library card to use your tmcc.edu website?
No, everything on my webpage that I just showed you is completely free for anyone to use. And we do give out community borrowing cards. Now, Peggy, I don't think you live in Nevada, do you?
I live in Oklahoma City.
That's okay, Peggy. I can get you a guest username and password. It has limited life. It's not good forever. But as long as you keep on, occasionally at least coming to class, I can go ahead and keep on giving you a new guest username and password. So Peggy, if you don't mind, just shoot me an email and I'll be more than happy to send that to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? This was a wonderful presentation, Julie. This is actually a topic because I am a member of Colonial Dames of the 17th century. And of course, they do really stress doing your family crest research. And quite frankly, I was overwhelmed when I looked at the heraldry books that we have here at the library. But now, thanks to your presentation, I think I can maybe begin to tackle that.
Yeah, little by little.
Okay, great. Okay, well, if there's no further questions, Julie, I'll say thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, and thank you for joining us again. This is your second presentation, so we definitely appreciate that. And just before you log off, let me just tell the class if there's anything in the chat box that you would like to download before you leave today, please do so, because once you leave the Zoom link, even if you sign back in, you're going to lose the chat box. So please download that chat box if it's important to you. And then we do stay for another hour or so of class. So if any of you would like to stay, all of you are more than welcome. And we're going to be working on our trees or discuss whatever topic of genealogy you'd like to discuss, and hope to see everyone back again next week. So Julie, I will go ahead and say thank you once again, and I will stop the recording.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.